Minasan, welcome back for another round of Battletech research. The Mechwarrior. Yes, heading over. This is a viewer recommended research from Vicril. I am probably butchering your name. I apologize. Vicril165 recommended Big Red 40 Tech to check out the mechs. Going to see if this is a good lore video on the Shiro. Battletech the Shiro. It's all about the mech called the Shiro from House Kurita. Very curious to see how the mechs are in this particular world. It sounds very interesting, and you know, when it comes to the storytelling with these things, they usually these things like weapons, vehicles, and such. They always have lore behind them. That little piece of lore, the legend, the myth. It's it really gives a lot of flavor to your world build, to your stories. When you share such things, like for example, Excalibur. There you go. Excalibur has a myth unto itself in the Arthurian tales. You know, you hear the names and you speak of it and so on. You know, naming your mechs and naming your weapons properly really gives a lot of story in and of itself. You know, especially when you give it unique names. Now this one is the Shiro, and given that it's from Space Japan, the House Kurita, that I can only imagine that the Shiro is probably like samurai, a samurai mech type of thing. Probably has a samurai sword along with some cannons with it. Who the pilot is, I don't know. Doesn't explain anything. But what I do know is that it sounds pretty cool because it's very simple. You know, it's just two syllables: Shiro, and that's it. I'm sure Big Red Tech probably call it Shiro. The Shiro, almost sounds like Bushido. I could be wrong though. I'm probably 100% wrong. I'm going into like theory territory. I gotta be careful with that. So, call to action: comment, like, subscribe, follow, and hit the notification bell. And let us begin the research. Mortal Kombat. The dragon is its people. They are the dragons. Dragon Ball Z. Ooh.
Symbols and spectacle can be powerful things, not just for setting narratives or for establishing political power, but in warfare as well. Unlike many of their peers, House Kurita, the Draconis Combine, has embraced an idea that its soldiers can be further inspired not only by valorous acts on the battlefield by their peers, but through the very appearance of their war machines. First truly starting with the Hatamoto Chi, a spin-off of the Charger and the Thug, the Combine would continue with time to build a series of, for lack of a better word, totem mechs over the century since this first mech's introduction. These machines appear to be almost like samurai warriors in various ways in regards to their armored plating or other elements. In the Dark Age, one of the most remarkable examples of this would be constructed, and it is probably the most recognizable of these samurai-appearing mechs, beyond the Hatamoto itself. Named for the founding ruler of House Kurita, and having one of the most recognizable looks from its era of Battletech, in this video, we are going to examine Luthien Armorworks' heavy samurai-styled battle mech, the Shiro. Built explicitly to evoke nationalistic pride in the Draconis Combine, as well as to encourage soldiers and Mechwarriors with its samurai-like appearance. The 75-ton heavy mech known as the Shiro is one of the most recognizable and dangerous heavy mechs of the Dark Age. Even its name, Shiro, is meant to be attached to this, as it is titled after the founder of the Draconis Combine, Kurita Shiro. These mechs themselves are considered to be an honor to be chosen to pilot too, with those who are assigned to them often being officers, and all of them having received military recognition in the form of honors being bestowed upon them. In most cases it's noted as being the Bushido Blade. With all of this being taken into account, one can see the Shiro's appearance as being an essential part of its very being in its actual purpose. It is a beacon of nationalism, and a reward for the most loyal soldiers of the Combine, as well as something that Mechwarriors should aspire to earn for themselves at some point. Its battlefield performance also is mostly a fierce one, with the Draconis Combine installing advanced and powerful technologies into this national icon of a war machine. The first of these monstrosities were constructed in 3135 by Luthien Armor Works. The developer, without a doubt, is the most important in the entirety of the Draconis Combine, and it would be hard to say that any other mech manufacturer in-house Kurita would be expected to bring a machine like this to the mustered soldiery. The mech itself was built for those who had received honors from the DCMS, as mentioned prior, but its main role on the battlefield is to be that of a tactical on-field command mech for officers, namely those who would, and should, be moving with local formations of mechs.
I
This means
see.
that the Shiro will appear as a command mech for many lances, companies, or battalions.
So basically, the Shiro's purpose is to act like a commander, a general. So like it stands in the front line, it raises the sword up and motivates everybody, and then leads the charge type of thing. It's tactical, so it's a tactical command mech. So it's kind of like its presence. If I'm understanding correctly, then its presence is to. It's not just so much to lead, but to be have this iconographic look to it. Like if I was the enemy and I saw the Shiro, I realized we're screwed if we make the wrong move, type of thing. It'll look intimidating, and could damage the morale, if that's what I'm understanding from what's being explained so far.
Interestingly, though, it was never intended to be the mech leading these soldiers at the point of the spear. Instead, the Shiro was always built with the idea in mind that it can keep pace with heavy mech formations, and act as a coordinating leader from the back line of an advancing formation. In reality, this doesn't always end up being the case, with zealous Combine commanders sometimes ending up in the thick of the fighting, where they don't belong. Thankfully for the DCMS, the mech is very well protected, but this is not doctrinally how the mech is meant to be used. It's important to also point out that the Shiro does come with two distinct configurations, and always has from the start, with both being manufactured simultaneously in 3135. These two variants depart very much in terms of their battlefield capabilities, and the SH2P, the much less commonly manufactured configuration of the Shiro, is considered to be an honored gift, awarded on behalf of the Gunji no Kanri. For most of the mech's history so far, the Gunji no Kanri was in fact Toranaga Masuhari, the man who would lead the Combine to a number of wildly successful victories in the Dark Age, including the taking of New Avalon. After the collapse of the HPG network and the explosion of violence and hostilities across the Inner Sphere, these two battle mechs would become centerpieces of Toranaga's campaign in almost every theater. They would lead battles against the Republic of the Sphere to liberate the Dairon military district from the yoke of the Republic's rule. When Toranaga turned towards his true enemy, House Davian, it would be at the forefront of the dragon's assault on the Draconis marches. Most fascinatingly, in the Battle of Exeter, a Davian world, the Taisa who had been awarded the Shiro for his deployment would have it revoked, as instead of properly leading his troops, he routinely brandished his mech to underlings instead of properly taking charge in the campaign. Unsurprisingly, his career ended in disgrace.
Damn.
This is an exception, however, because more glory follows this warrior-born machine than humiliation. The Shiro would be there when the Novacats were cut down for their treachery against the state. Most importantly, the Shiro would stand tall against the Federated Sons in more battles than just Exeter, playing a key role in the fall of Robinson, helping to seal the fate of the 12th Avalon Hussars.
Wow. So, pretty much, when the Shiro, if used properly, the Shiro can be seen as a mark of honor, whether it's tactical or taken to the front line. But if you take it to the front line, if you use it as the lead fighter, you're taking a big risk on being disgraced. But if you succeed, then you'll receive accolades and will be treated with legendary reverence, like in the case of the Novacats. But you can also screw up and end up being disgraced and losing the Shiro. That's that falls in line with the Bushido code there. It seems like it falls in line with the Bushido code, but with a giant mech. It's very interesting. I'm seeing this unique take on the Bushido code. Even though they're not saying it's the Bushido code. Even though it's not being, he's not saying that's the Bushido code. It does come off as the Bushido code.
And then acting as a command mech for the legion of forces deployed on the inevitable victory on New Avalon. One of the most legendary victories in history, some time before these other victories. It would be a Shiro that crushed First Prince Caleb Davian inside of his tank. But as the sun rises and sets, and as the dragon awakens and tires, not all of these glories would last forever. The Gunji no Kanri would overextend his forces, as the Davians desperately rallied in response to their failures. This new First Prince would marshal his forces and leverage an enormous amount of financial reserves and other assets to strike back against the Combine. Toranaga would be killed, and New Avalon would once more fall into the hands of the Federated Sons.
Oh, so
noteworthy that the Shiro would be amongst the defenders.
Wow, so Toranaga
fighting
fell
for the dragon's glory, even in defeat. Much of the rest of the dragon's tongue, their invasion corridor into the suns, would be lost as well, with the Shiro falling beside the forces who stood fast in the face of the Davian response. Without a doubt, the Fed-Sun Combine War, and every other major conflict of the Dark Age where this 75-ton samurai led DCMS forces into battle, not only cemented its worth, as its steel was more than tested, but it also informed the enemies of House Karita what would await them should violence or conflict be the destiny between the house and its enemies. In victory, the Combine would be extravagantly supreme, and in defeat, they would force their enemies to pay a bitter price. The Shiro embodies this truth.
wow, and this is just the introduction. The Shiro sounds real awesome. The SHI-1B
The late Dark
Shiro.
Age Luthian designed and manufactured heavy mech known as the Shiro, in its base configuration, the SH-1V, uses a series of advanced technologies to create a worthwhile fighter, support mech, and even an upfront juggernaut of last resort. Built with a number of considerations in mind, it does become a bit of a jack of all trades in some respects. Oddly, it's been called in-universe a pocket assault mech, which does seem a bit off if I'm honest, at least in comparison to other assault mechs of this time, and despite its heavier weight. Still, this 75-ton samurai warrior of the Draconis Combine is not a mech to be trifled with under most conditions. So, let's start going over why. A hunger for tonnage is one of the staples of this proud Karidan Colossus, and to try to combat this craving, the SH-1V uses endo steel for its internal structure. This reduces its frame from being 7.5 tons down to 4 tons.
Okay.
But at the expense of a large volume of space inside of the battle mech.
Oh.
The starvation not being satiated by just this, however, would also result in the Shiro having an XL gyro installed on board, saving more tonnage in exchange for critical space once more. This also makes the mech more vulnerable to critical hits to the center torso, which may immediately destroy its ability to move across the battlefield. Still, XL gyros aren't uncommon at this time, and in this case is likely at least somewhat necessary, but it is a high price to pay for tonnage. The cockpit, the last of the key internal components on board this titanic battle mech, is of standard assembly. Being the Dark Age, it is essentially a default position that the SH-1V be equipped with double heat sinks. And it is. 0 tonnage is put into this, however, as the mech is mostly ballistics oriented, and once more, the Shiro is looking to save on tonnage where it can for other elements of the mech. This means that the SH-1V cools by 20 every turn. It can run marginally hot as a result, but it cannot suffer negative impacts, even with an alpha strike over the course of 1 turn, which ranks it as acceptable in my eyes. As far as electronics are concerned, Law made the choice to install a Cypher ComSys 4 communications package, as well as a Nico Megane 7 targeting and tracking system. Notably, neither of these components give the Shiro any additional benefits in-game. As a frontline command mech as well, this means its Cypher system does not actually confer it the command mech ability, which may not be crippling, but it does work against its intended battlefield role in the advanced rules. Speaking of those rules, it does have one trait which does give it a bonus with the advanced rules. Because of its dedicated samurai-like appearance, the Shiro benefits from the distracting quirk. There are many cases, for both the Inner Sphere and clans, where huge engines are placed into 75-ton chassis to maximize their mobility. From the Timberwolf through to the War Dog, it is far from uncommon for a big engine to find its way into a heavy mech chassis. The Shiro follows in this tradition itself, because of the intended role of the machine. As a frontline command mech, it needs to be able to keep up with formations, even if it's not in the thick of the fighting at every moment. It must match up with Inner Sphere battle line formations, breakthrough formations, and even potentially light and medium forces. To achieve the fastest output they can without risking the engine or the myomers on board, Law would install a 19.5-ton Ford 375 XL Fusion engine, which would normally give the Shiro a maximum speed of 86 km per hour. Because of its advanced defensive plating, however, the SH-1V's running movement is reduced by 1, which means its maximum speed is in fact 75 km per hour, or 7 movement points in the tabletop game. The engine itself, being an Inner Sphere XL engine, does mean if it loses a side torso, it will be immediately knocked out, further adding to the internal fragility of the mech. But it is a sacrifice which has to be made in order for the machine to achieve its movement goals.
That's actually fascinating how the story is being incorporated within the game mechanics. For example, the 75 tonnage of its weight is playing a major factor in your game's movement, and as part of the story's lore, we find that that the Luthien Ironworks manufacturer at times makes adjustments, removing certain amount of internal parts and replacing it with others to try to get it to maintain its try to maintain a speed that keeps up with the formation of what it is leading. And I think this is part of the result of when the commanders decide to put it out into the front line. That because the Shiro is supposed to be a backline command mech, but if but it seems like some of the generals who want that glory while piloting the Shiro are willing to sacrifice certain tonnage, certain parts to reduce the tonnage, and putting in a stronger engine. That's interesting. A Ford 19.5 ton 37XL fusion engine, something like that type of engine, so they can maintain the maximum speed of 75 kilometers. But most importantly, not only just to keep up with formations, but also fast enough to get out of the way and out of danger. To see that incorporated, being explained within the context of the rules itself while maintaining the story, it's actually pretty good because it's giving it that nice flavor text to the game portion of Battletech. I really like to see the statue. I really would like to see the figurine of the Shiro. The artwork is looking great, but I'm very curious what the statue looks like.
The mobility it's sacrificed for, however, means it can achieve, if moving in a straight line, reasonable defensive bonuses in the open. It also means that the Shiro is graceful and quick enough to, of course, keep in line with armies that it is leading, even if it is doing so from the rear. This means it can escape trouble if needed, or charge into battle as a last-ditch effort to salvage a faltering situation in harsh combat conditions. In essence, it gives it options, and options are, in and of themselves, power. It may not move like a mad cat, but it's faster than a marauder, and its engine is a major focus of weight and attention as a result. Beyond its reasonable ability to move, allowing it to generate defensive bonuses and find cover from enemy fire, the SH-1V places an exceptionally heavy focus on its exterior defenses, if only
Makes
because
sense.
of its extremely vulnerable internals. With an XL gyro, XL engine, and an abundance of volatile ammunition, all of which could result in the catastrophic failure of the battle mech if they were hit, the Shiro must be well guarded from enemy attacks. It does this in two key ways. The first is to have a Guardian ECM suite. While the Angel ECM had replaced the Guardian ECM for the most part by the time of its manufacturing, the Guardian, frankly, takes up less space, both in tonnage and critical, and this was likely the reason why it was chosen for the mech. This provides the Shiro with an invisible layer of electronic countermeasures that will safeguard it to some extent. Though more advanced targeting, tracking, and sensor arrays by Dark Age may limit its functionality to some extent, should its opposition have something like a Bloodhound probe to fall back on. The real protection for the Shiro, however, comes in the form of its huge investment in hardened armor. Hardened armor more or less takes half damage from incoming fire, unless it's attacked by something like a re-engineered laser, and this allows the mech to go well past the threshold of armored plating as a result. So 16 points of hardened armor is equivalent under most conditions to 32 points of armor. Hardened plating only gives 8 points per ton, but once more, it allows the mech to just have more. Importantly though, hardened armor does reduce the maximum movement speed of a battle mech by 1, which is why the Shiro walks 5 and runs 7, rather than running 8. Functionally speaking though, because of this technology, the SH-1V has more armor than an Atlas, as it has a shocking 21 tons of this material, giving it 168 points of plating, but making its carapace equivalent to 336 points of armor when facing most weaponry. This means that the Shiro can be very difficult to put down, should fire not manage to pierce into its internal systems. The SH-1V spends an enormous percentage of its tonnage on non-weapon systems. Now this can happen to any of these heavy mechs when it commits to being faster, but when combined with its abundance of armored protection, things start to get a bit cramped. In total, the mech has around 25.5 tons to play with for its weapon systems. Now, this isn't the end of the world, but it does limit what's possible in terms of its offensive power. It benefits greatly from using clan tech weaponry too, at least to some extent, but there is also, frankly, a blunder in regards to its primary cannon. So, to start with, the Shiro has 4 Shigunga C-type LRM-10 launchers. These are clan-quality missile systems, which means they collectively only weigh 10 tons, and in total it has 3 tons of ammunition for them mounted in the right torso. The launchers themselves are spread evenly between the right and left torsos, to be clear. Now,
So basically, despite their efforts to reduce the weight, removing some internal parts, they end up reestablishing the heavyweight when they start installing weapons aside from the sword, but like the guns and such, launchers, missiles. They start adding reestablishing the original weight they took out, which is I don't know if that's counterintuitive. I mean, they are trying to make it up with speed, but the more weight you put on it, the less speed you get. It's very interesting how in story this is set up on him.
Now, Clan Tech LRM systems have one big advantage over their inner sphere counterparts, beyond just weighing half as much, in that they don't have a minimum range.
Oh
This
boy.
means the Shiro can fight at all ranges with these missiles, and may scorch enemies who come in trying to engage it in close, as if it were an archer. The true mistake the Shiro seems to make is its left arm cannon, which is a 6-ton Imperator LB2X autocannon. That is right, it does 2 scatter damage, where 1 round may not even hit the target if it hits. This weapon has an extreme range, make no mistake, but it basically does no damage, and only has use shooting at VTOLs, or perhaps aerospace fighters. This might not be so bad, except for the fact that the Shiro, only has about 25 tons of weaponry. When factoring in its ammunition, which is another ton, it makes the problem all the more severe. Genuinely, the SH-1V is great in a lot of respects, but the LB-2X is just a weapon with extremely limited value, and one which weighs a lot. It's a tonnage sink, and it's sad to see.
Got it.
Finally,
Yeah,
to defend
so
itself gracefully and close, it
they
has a
put-
right arm mounted sword. This is an accurate striking close range weapon, as it does gain a 2 bonus to hit that will help the Shiro should the enemy try to come in close to fight it. The problem is, it doesn't do very much damage, as it only does 9 damage a swing. Now, this is still effective at crushing smaller mechs, certainly, but it does feel a bit light in this respect to invest 4 tons into a weapon that does 1 more damage than simply punching.
That's not
Again,
a very good design.
Accuracy matters, and it can be useful, but in my eyes, swords are defective hatchets.
Wow, that's
This
rough.
legendary command mech serves its purpose well. It's faster than most heavy missile support mechs from the inner sphere. It can launch bombardments of LRMs on targets routinely with little trouble. Its outer carapace is extremely tough, making it functionally more protected than an Atlas, most of the time. It does what's on the tin. It supports formations, keeping pace with them, and has excellent tactical maneuvering too. And it can get stuck in, should the situation demand it. Where things fail for the SH-1V is that it has a functionally useless left arm weapon that it spends a huge amount of tonnage on, and it has a sword, which is fine for what it is, but it may not always impress. The other major issue it has, of course, is that if anything gets past its hardened armor, the Shiro is filled with sensitive and volatile materials,
Really?
which can and will degrade, or will destroy the mech should they be hit. There is no flawless mech out there, and while the Shiro may not be perfect, it is still something to be respected. Should a pilot and commander mask its weaknesses and press into its strengths, it will be a durable, frustrating piece for its enemies to remove from a battle. Should it be mismanaged, or should it be deployed into conditions not fitting for it, the Shiro will be disabled and destroyed in quick order. But, while the SH-1V is the mainstream configuration of the mech, Law did create another, far more dangerous counterpart to it, for the most favored of the Coordinator and the Gunji no Kanri. Built as a...
Yeah, this, the Shiro sounds like a solid, mech, but it's sacrificing so much just so it could have, a level of power, to frighten and overwhelm the enemy with. To have so many vulnerabilities is, pretty insane. And I don't know if I were playing that, I don't know if I would want to run the Shiro unless I have a good army to work with. If I were to play the game, of course. But it is a nice balance because you are putting in a lot of power. It's unfortunate that the sword doesn't do a lot of damage, though. It doesn't do much damage. That means that it's very difficult to take down armies and so on. And it has to rely on heavy cannons with a very weak armor in a sense. It's that's pretty bold.
Prized, almost unique upgrade for only the most talented and storied members of the Draconis Combine Mustard Soldiery. The SH-2P Shiro is a significant step up from its 1V counterpart. Assembled at the same time, but in much smaller numbers due to being much more expensive, mostly due to changes in its armored protection and armaments. So far, the 2P is the peak Shiro configuration yet seen on the battlefields of the Inner Sphere. To begin our examination, because of its reconfiguration of weaponry and armor, it opens up more space for its cooling system, which is greatly enhanced. Its onboard heat sinks are increased from 10 to 13, giving it the ability to cool 26 per turn. These new heat sinks are deposited into the engine, meaning they don't take up any additional onboard critical space for the mech, thankfully. Following this up, the mech also has a coolant pod, which
Really?
is essential for operating its new offensive package. This gives a brief enhancement to the mech's cooling, but if it is unused, it is yet another volatile component on board, which will, as you can guess, explode if struck by enemy fire. The defense of the SH-2P also changed radically, namely by removing its Guardian ECM to save on weight, but also changing out its hardened armor. With its plating now shifting to an alternative type, it means the mech's speed is also increased to 86 km per hour as well, making it faster on the battlefield too and giving it more options. The new plating it possesses is 19.5 tons of ballistic reinforced armor, arguably one of the best protective plating sets in the game.
Okay.
Autocannons, Gauss rifles, and missiles will basically be halved in their effectiveness against the exterior shell of this new type of armor. It is very effective. In the realm of weaponry, its LRM-10 launchers remain unchanged, and so does its sword. The real difference is dropping its pitiful AC-2 autocannon and replacing it with a powerful, advanced Clan-Tech particle projection cannon. It's likely some form of Lord's Light PPC, but the official manufacturer has not been yet revealed as a part of its technical specifications. This, as you can probably already guess, is a head clipper and breakthrough weapon. It cannot be fired reliably with all of the missile systems due to heat concerns, save on turns where it is using its coolant pod. Still, it gives it a heavy, solid, concentrated punch, and one which is not ammunition dependent. It is much more fearsome of a weapon than a mere AC-2. In total, the SH-2P is more heavily gunned, almost as well protected, and is faster than its counterpart, the SH-1V. This is truly the Shiro to be most concerned about, should you find yourself facing one of these monsters down. It is truly the guardian of the Coordinator and the keeper of the honor of the Draconis Combine Mustard Soldiery.
Wow. Oh, there was still more. That's I gotta say, so far this was a fantastic mech, very well balanced out between speed and defense and strength. Um, its efficiency it varies on how you want to approach it. If you want to treat it in the back lines as a formation builder, as in the lore, or go for the glory and put it out in the front and risk losing the Shiro because it did give up certain aspects in order to have the speed. It's some of a lot of these concepts I really want to try and find out. There's lore behind them, like the Luthian manufacturer. We're gonna need to find out about that. I'll elaborate more in a bit. Final thoughts? Okay.
When Gunji no Kanri Toranaga Matsuhari unleashed the Shiro on the enemies of the Draconis Combine, it was a shock to the Republic, and to the Federated Suns at the time. Shortly after, the Nova Cats discovered its deadly qualities as well. While the Combine has a multitude of other dangerous mechs from this time, and even more dangerous mechs which were retrofitted for the Dark Ages, there are few that left the lasting impact that the Shiro has. Not only did it play a role in multiple key battles, and was piloted by a man who would kill a first prince of the Federated Suns, the mech's striking appearance and decent battlefield performance only further cemented its credibility and legacy as one of the premier Draconis Combine mechs of this era.
Wow.
While the Shiro in its base form may waste tonnage on an AC-2, it is still armed like an archer, and is faster. One poor design decision often does not cripple a battle mech.
Okay,
In
true.
battle,
That's
the
very true.
Shiro is extremely capable, and is very hard to remove, barring a lucky strike on ammunition or its gyro in rapid succession, of course. It is, at least in theory, as hard to remove as an Atlas. Due to its mobility, it might even be more difficult to do so. Know that when you see the 75-ton warrior on the battlefield, it will often send legions of Combine forces before it, all while launching dangerous missile strikes. And if it's the SH-2P, it will be dangerous clan ERPPC strikes as well.
I can see why
When
he
their
liked it
enemies
to an
are
archer.
worn down or overwhelmed, only then will the Blade Master come in for the kill. The Dragon's designers on Luthien have done their duty well, it seems, because the Shiro has brought the Dragon's law to the inner sphere. It is at the point of its blade that the Combine has achieved more success than in any other time in its history.
This is a really awesome mech. Mortal Kombat.
The summer grass is all that remains of a soldier's dreams. The summer grass, the splendid dreams of samurai warriors.
All right.
Thank you for joining me here today.
No, thank you for such a good video. Yeah, be sure to check Big Red 40 Tech in the description down below. This was actually a nice look into the lore of the Shiro. What it stands for, what it does. It's kind of crazy. At how deep it is in terms. Well, I wouldn't just say Shiro alone. I'm very fascinated to see. I'm very fascinated to see. I would like to get lore on the manufacturing companies. Now having heard how lore-wise the mech had to be compensated, had to be adjusted, the way it had to be built to do what it does and be feared when out in the battlefield, despite some of the flaws that it made, just so it could have some speed in exchange for getting rid of the weight, but has some vulnerabilities. There's still plenty enough of what it does to instill fear if left unchecked. And as the narrator likened the Shiro to that of the archer, it makes perfect sense, knowing that it would fire missiles and tons of daka as the front line charges at the out into the battlefield. Then you also got some of the generals who pilot the Shiro to end up forgetting the purpose of the Shiro, and they go out into the field, get into the fight, and they take a big risk because if they screw up, they will be disgraced and basically lose everything. And that's pretty cool lore. But I'm just liking, but what I'm liking is the lore build of the manufacturing part. And the Luthian manufacturer, I want to find that. I want to find a lore vid on that because I want to know how that came to be. You know, saying how the company was built, who created it, how they go about doing the, how they get the logistics, you know, the ideas. Because they created this this very devastating mech, and how much money did they get out of that? You know what I mean? There's so much to that. And seeing and let me tell you something. It's always fantastic finding out. You know, when you start deep diving more and more, you end up seeing these wonderful links here, and finding out that there's more fascinating stuff. But overall, I like the Shiro. Overall, I like the Shiro. I like the design. This is a pretty cool design. You know, calling in for the samurai. The sword is on the weak side, unfortunately. I'm very surprised though, because usually, you know, I would have expected it to be the shape of, to be designed like a katana and can deliver damage. But I guess it's more. I guess the way, because of the way it's supposed to be a command mech, you know, it's supposed to just direct and lead while providing, you know, archer like missiles and weaponry. The sword might be ceremonial. I think it's just, you know, just for show, not intended to legit fight. You know what I mean? Like like I'll give a fair I'll give this fair comparison. The Gundam, you know what I'm saying, when it pulls out the laser sword really has functionality and really can dish out a lot of damage and can really split other mechs apart. This doesn't do that, which is which I would probably say may be fair, because then it will be an overpowered, because it's giving up a lot of weight. It's giving up a lot of weight to put back in another level of weight just so it could have more power in terms of combat, you know, to be able to deliver more damage. But they don't address the sword itself and just leave the sword sort of like almost acting like a ceremonial headpiece, a symbol of the Shiro and the combine, the Draconic combine. That kind of makes sense, and could also explain why it's such a high risk to go out there, you know, to put for the Shiro to go out on the front line. It makes perfect sense because you do not want to go into hand-to-hand combat with a sword that does 1 damage, that only does 1 point of damage. I'm sure that I'm sure game-wise, there's a lot of ways to you know, boost up the damage for the sword, no doubt. You know, game design wise, you don't want to straddle a player with a weak weapon like that. I'm sure that there's synergetic properties that could be put into it, and it could be and the sword could be very, very potent and very, very powerful, if not very, very dangerous. So yeah, I definitely want to try and find the Luthian manufacturer lore. If there's a video on that, you know, let me know in the comments down below. So big thanks to Vicril, sorry, I keep butchering your name, Vicril 65 for the recommendation of Big Red 40 Tech. If these other videos are anything like this one, these mech videos, I definitely will come back to that and check out other mechs, especially if they're in the Draconic Combine, and check out what they do. So Links links down in the description below for Big Red 40 Tech. Good job, very good job. So that's it. Head on over to Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and grab yourself a copy of The Impossible Man, a strange fantasy novel written by me. You'll find links to the book in the description down below, along with links to the other merch such as pins, stickers, t-shirts, music. Enjoy the products. Thank you for your patronage. And if you happen to have a copy of The Impossible Man and did a lore video on it on YouTube, thank you very much. I look forward to hearing your take on the book. And if you're interested, you can join me in my live multi-stream on Twitch and Kick every Monday through Thursday, 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I do lore research, behind-the-scenes stuff, cultural studies, gaming, many more. I do a lot. I do a lot of stuff here. So I look forward to hanging out. So until the next round of Battletech research, thank you all for joining me, and I wish you all a good night. Buenas noches, and oyasumi nasai.